Welcome to Whispers of Crime. Today, we're looking at a case that is just. It's a labyrinth of paranoia, contradictions, and what feels like a profound failure of justice.
It's a story that starts with whispers and secrets in a small town and spirals into something much, much darker.
So let's start with the central mystery, the hook that makes this case so completely baffling.
What if I told you an anonymous writer terrorized an entire Ohio town for 20 years, exposing affairs, threatening children, even killing? Letters arrived by the hundreds, filled with secrets only neighbors could know.
And when you think you have an answer, when you think it's over, it's not.
But here's the disturbing part. When police arrested someone, the letters kept coming from inside a maximum security prison.
That's the part that's just impossible to wrap your head around.
The Circleville letters began in 1977 in Circleville, Ohio, 25 miles south of Columbus. What started as a fair, accusations spiraled into attempted murder, mysterious death, and wrongful conviction.
For almost 50 years.
Nearly 50 years later, the true identity remains officially unsolved.
All right, before we get into the timeline for everyone listening, please make sure you're subscribed.
Yes, subscribe to Whispers of Crime on YouTube. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and other podcast platforms. It really helps us keep bringing you these stories.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Circleville, Ohio. What was this town like before all of this began?
It was, by all accounts, a pretty typical all-American town. Its main claim to fame was the annual pumpkin show, a huge festival. It was quiet, community-focused.
The last place you'd expect a decades-long campaign of psychological terror.
Exactly. And then in the late 1970s, the letters start. And these weren't just simple gossip. They were described as vicious and ugly.
And specific, right. The details were what made them so terrifying.
Incredibly specific. The writer knew things, intimate things, rumored affairs, sure, but also alleged embezzlement from local businesses, domestic violence happening behind closed doors, corruption.
So whoever this was, they were either connected to everyone or they were just watching. Constantly.
That was the effect. It created this deep paranoia. Suddenly you're looking at your neighbor, your friend, the person you see at the grocery store, and you're wondering, is it you? Do you know my secrets?
It weaponizes the community against itself.
Perfectly put. And there is a very clear signature to these letters, a style that connected them all.
Okay, what was it?
They were always written in these blocky capital letters, a clear attempt to disguise the writer's natural handwriting.
Standard procedure for poison pen letters, I guess.
Right. But more than that, they were always, without fail, postmarked from Columbus, which is about 30 miles north.
So deliberate misdirection. Make the police think the writer isn't local.
Precisely. And the strangest quirk, the one that document experts later obsessed over, was the punctuation. The writer used colons excessively.
Colons? How do you mean?
I mean everywhere, where you'd put a comma, a period, sometimes just for emphasis. It was a very distinct, very unusual linguistic tic.
So who was the first target? Where did this all start?
It started with a school bus driver named Mary Gillispie and the local school superintendent, a married man named Gordon Massey. The letters accused them of having an affair.
But it went beyond just accusations, didn't it? It became threatening very quickly.
Immediately. One of the first letters to Mary made it clear this wasn't just about exposing a secret. It said, I know where you live. I've been observing your house and know you have children. This is no joke. Please take it serious.
Oh, wow. That's a direct threat to her family.
Hmm.
The writer's saying, I'm watching you. I know where your kids sleep.
It's an immediate escalation from gossip to psychological warfare. And Mary, understandably, tried to keep it quiet at first. She didn't want the humiliation, the public scandal.
But the writer wouldn't let it stay quiet.
No. Soon, letters started arriving for her husband, Ron Gillispie, and the tone of those letters was even more aggressive.
What were they saying to him?
They were warning him, telling him his life was undoubtedly in danger if he didn't put a stop to this supposed affair.
So they're trying to incite him, to make him angry and paranoid.
They were. And one letter crossed a line that is just bone-chilling. It essentially told Ron to commit murder.
What did it say?
It advised him, quote, you should catch them together and kill them both. He doesn't deserve to live.
My God. The writer is actively trying to provoke a double homicide.
Yeah.
This isn't just a crank anymore. This is someone deeply malicious.
And it didn't stop with letters. The harassment became public. The writer started putting up crude, offensive signs along Mary's bus route.
So every day she goes to work, she's confronted with this.
She was. And her husband, Ron, trying to protect her, he would get up early and drive her route before she did, just tearing down these signs.
Imagine that. being forced to clean up your own public humiliation day after day. The writer's enjoying this. They're enjoying the control.
That's the core of it. This deep, profound malice and a desire for absolute control over this family's life. They were trying to break them.
So what did the Gillespies do? They couldn't just live with this.
No, eventually they had to confide in someone, but they kept the circle incredibly small. It was just Ron's sister, Karen Sue Freshour, her husband, Paul Freshour, and Paul's sister.
So a tiny group of people.
A very small circle of trust. And Paul Freshour, he was a former prison guard, worked at Anheuser-Busch. He decided to take action.
He tried to fight back.
He did. Mary had a suspicion. She thought the writer might be another bus driver, a man named David Longberry, who she said had made advances that she'd rejected.
A plausible theory. Scorned admirer.
Right. So Paul, acting on this theory, wrote a letter of his own to Longberry. Basically, a bluff. He wrote that the family knew who the writer was and that they'd better stop.
And did it work?
For a while, yes. The letter stopped, completely, for several weeks. The family must have felt this immense sense of relief, like they thought it was over.
But it wasn't.
Not even close. The silence ended on August 19th, 1977.
What happened?
Ron Gillispie got a phone call. His daughter, who was home, said she heard her dad get angrier and angrier on the phone. When he hung up, he was enraged.
Was it the writer?
He believed it was. He told his daughter he knew who was behind the letters and he was going to go confront them. Right then, right there.
And he left.
He grabbed his .22 caliber pistol, got in his pickup truck, and drove off.
And just a short time later.
A very short time later, Ron Gillispie was found dead. His truck had veered off the road and crashed into a tree. He was only 35.
That cannot be a coincidence. A man who has been threatened for months gets an enraging call, goes to confront his tormentor with a gun, and ends up dead minutes later. This has to be murder.
It certainly seems that way, but that's not what the official report said.
What was the official ruling?
The Pickaway County coroner ruled it an accidental death. They cited a high blood alcohol content, a .16, which was well over the legal limit. So the official story was that Ron Gillispie got drunk, angry, and crashed his truck.
But that just ignores all the context. What about the people who knew him?
His friends, his family, especially Paul Freshour, they all insisted Ron was not a heavy drinker. That level of intoxication seemed completely out of character. And then there's the most critical piece of evidence.
The gun.
The gun. His .22 caliber revolver was found at the scene. It was under his body, and it had been fired once.
Fired once. And they could find a bullet. No bullet hole in the truck. No sign of what he shot at.
Never found. Which leaves so many questions. Did Ron shoot at his attacker and miss? Did the attacker shoot him, causing him to lose control and fire his own weapon in the process? We just don't know.
But the presence of a fired weapon makes the drunken accident theory almost impossible to believe. It screams of a confrontation.
It does. And Paul Freshour pushed hard for a murder investigation. He went to Sheriff Dwight Radcliffe and pleaded with him.
And what was the sheriff's response?
Well, Paul always alleged that initially Sheriff Radcliffe agreed with him, that it looked like foul play. But then, after their primary suspect, David Longberry, passed a polygraph test, the sheriff's attitude completely changed.
Why? Why would he back off?
This is where it gets political. At that exact time, Sheriff Radcliffe was running for the presidency of the National Sheriff's Association. Yeah. Having a bizarre, unsolved murder case tied to a town-wide terror campaign? That's not a good look for your career. A simple, tragic accident is much cleaner.
So closing the case quickly served his political ambitions.
It was the expedient conclusion. And the letter writer saw this. They saw this potential cover-up, and they exploited it immediately.
How?
New letters started appearing all over town, this time accusing Sheriff Radcliffe himself of orchestrating a cover-up to protect his career. The writer was now attacking the investigation itself.
That's brilliant in a terrifying way. They commit a potential murder and then immediately pivot to discrediting the person in charge of investigating it.
And it worked. It sowed more chaos, more distrust. Ron's death didn't end the campaign and embolden the writer. It proved they could get away with anything.
So for the next 6 years, this just continues.
It not only continues, it escalates dramatically. The writer became unbound, targeting anyone and everyone in a position of power.
So it wasn't just about the Gillespies anymore.
Not at all. It was about tearing down the entire power structure of Pickaway County. The coroner who ruled Ron's death an accident, he was accused in letters of being a child abuser.
And was there any truth to that?
Shockingly, yes. He later faced immorality charges. The writer seemed to have inside information on everyone. The prosecutor who would eventually take on this case was accused of murder in a letter.
This person is trying to systematically dismantle the credibility of the entire justice system in that county.
And at the same time, the threats against Mary Gillespie's family got worse, specifically against her daughter.
How old was her daughter at this point?
She was a young teenager, and one letter made a direct, horrifying threat, saying, "It's your daughter's turn to pay. I shall come out there and put a bullet in that little girl's head."
That's just pure evil. There's no other word for it.
And there are some reports that the writer was moving beyond just words. One source claims that some letters sent to residents were dusted with arsenic.
So they were actively trying to poison people through the mail.
It seems so. The writer was demonstrating a clear willingness to inflict physical harm, which all culminated in February of 1983.
The booby-trap.
The booby-trap. Mary was on her bus route, an empty bus, and she saw another one of those signs. Another obscene, horrible sign, this time about her 13-year-old daughter.
And she stopped to take it down, like Ron used to.
She did. She went to pull the sign off the fence post, and she felt resistance. It was attached to something by a piece of twine.
What was it?
It was a small box, and inside that box was a loaded .25 caliber pistol, rigged to fire when the sign was pulled.
My God.
It was a crude device, but absolutely lethal. The only reason she's alive is because it malfunctioned. The gun didn't go off.
But this is the first real piece of hard evidence. A physical device. Something the police could actually investigate.
Exactly. The Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, the BCI, took over. They examined the gun, and they noticed the serial number had been filed off.
So they couldn't trace it?
Well, they used acid, a chemical process, to restore the number. And they got a hit.
Who did the gun belong to?
It was registered to Paul Freshour, Mary's brother-in-law. The man who had been the family's biggest advocate, the one who insisted Ron was murdered.
No. That can't be right. The one person who was fighting for them.
That was the name that came back. And overnight, the hero of the story became the prime suspect.
What did he say? How did he explain his gun being used in a booby trap meant to kill his sister-in-law?
He had an explanation, but it wasn't a good one. He claimed the gun had been stolen from his garage weeks before.
Okay, that's possible.
But he admitted he never reported it stolen. A huge mistake that made him look incredibly guilty.
So it's his word against the gun registration. And then the person closest to him turns on him.
His estranged wife, Karen Sue Freshour, they were in the middle of a very nasty divorce. She lost custody of the kids and was apparently living in a trailer on Mary Gillispie's property.
So she's right there in the middle of it all.
She is, and she goes to the police and tells them she believes Paul is the letter writer. She claims she found torn-up letters in their toilet, that she'd seen him writing them.
Did she have any proof? Did she keep any of these letters she supposedly found?
No, never produced a single shred of evidence. It was just her word. But for a police force desperate to close this case, it was everything they needed to hear.
So they had a motive, a bitter husband, maybe angry at Mary for her role in his family's problems. They had the weapon.
Yeah.
And now they had a witness, his own wife, pointing the finger.
The case they built was purely circumstantial, but it was compelling. Paul's off work the day the trap was found. The box used in the trap was a type of chalk box commonly found at his workplace, and then he failed a polygraph test.
Which isn't admissible in court, but it seals the deal in the minds of the investigators.
Absolutely. So in October of 1983, Paul Freshour goes on trial for the attempted murder of Mary Gillispie.
And the case is weak on physical evidence.
Yeah.
No fingerprints on the gun, on the box, nothing.
Nothing at all. So the prosecution had to establish malice. They had to convince the jury that Paul was the letter writer, that he had this deep-seated hatred.
So they put the letters on trial.
They did. Even though he wasn't charged with writing them, the judge allowed the prosecution to enter 39 of the Circleville letters into evidence.
39. So the jury is just inundated with this 6-year campaign of terror, and it's all being pinned on Paul.
Exactly. And the handwriting experts who testified didn't help his case. They said the writing on the letters could have been Paul's.
Could have been. What does that even mean? It's not a definitive match, it's an opinion.
It's a very low standard of proof. But when you combine that weak statement with the emotional impact of those 39 letters, the jury was convinced.
They convicted him.
They did. He was found guilty of attempted murder and given the maximum sentence, 7 to 25 years in prison.
And the town of Circleville must have breathed a collective sigh of relief. The monster was finally behind bars.
They thought the nightmare was over. But the nightmare was just entering its most unbelievable phase.
Because the moment he's locked away,
the letters start again, not just a few, hundreds of them. Over the next 11 years, while Paul Freshour is in a maximum security prison, the letters continue to flood Circleville.
This is the central paradox. How is that possible?
It's not. That's the thing. Prison officials went on record repeatedly. Freshour was, for a time, in solitary confinement. He was strip searched. He had no access to pens, paper, stamps. The prison warden himself publicly disputed the sheriff's theory that Paul was somehow masterminding it from the inside.
So you have the state's own correctional officers saying it is physically impossible for this man to be sending these letters.
Unequivocally. This should have been ironclad proof of his innocence, or at the very least, proof of a conspiracy. But it wasn't treated that way.
And the writer, the real writer, they knew this. They seemed to revel in it.
They did. In 1990, Paul Freshour came up for parole. He was denied. And what was the reason they gave?
Let me guess. The letters were still coming.
The letters were still coming. The parole board saw it as evidence that he was still a threat, that he was somehow directing this campaign from behind bars.
That's an unbelievable injustice. The very evidence that should have exonerated him was used to keep him in prison.
And right after he was denied parole, the writer sent a letter directly to Paul in prison.
Taunting him.
And making it clear they were in control. The letter said, "Freshour, now when are you going to believe you aren't getting out of there? I told you 2 years ago when we set him up, they stay set up."
We set him up.
Plural. We. That single word implies a conspiracy. That this wasn't one person. It was a coordinated effort to frame him and keep him locked away.
So he serves more time. When do the letters finally stop?
They stop in 1994, the exact same time Paul Freshour is finally released on parole after serving 10 years.
The timing is too perfect. It can't be a coincidence.
It's almost impossible to see it as one. It strongly suggests the writer's goal was accomplished, Paul was punished, his life was ruined, and then they just vanished.
And Paul maintained his innocence for the rest of his life.
Until the day he died in 2012. He knew how this would look, how the story would be told. He told a journalist once, "When I'm dead and in my grave, people are going to believe I'm sending those letters."
And years later, experts are still fighting over that very question.
Yes. In 2021, 2 different experts looked at the case files and came to 2 completely opposite conclusions.
Who were they?
First was Mary O'Toole, a former FBI profiler. She looked at the behavior, the psychology of the writer, the need for control, the manipulation, and she said it didn't fit Paul's profile.
What was her conclusion?
She believed the writer was most likely a woman, someone with personality disorders who was trying to mislead everyone by using masculine language. She couldn't reconcile the evidence with Paul being the author.
So a behavioral expert says it's not him. But then a forensic expert looks at the same files.
A forensic document expert named Beverly East. She looked at the handwriting itself, the physical evidence on the page. She compared Paul's known writing to dozens of the letters, including the ones sent while he was in prison.
And what did she find?
She found unique characteristics, a specific way he made his capital G, that it looked like the number 6, the way he formed certain numbers, and she said those exact same unique identifiers were in the letters. All of them.
Even the ones from prison?
Even those. She stated she was 100% sure that Paul Freshour wrote every single letter.
How can that be? How could both of these things be true? You have a forensic expert who was 100% certain, and you have prison officials who are 100% certain it was impossible.
And it gets even more baffling because of the fingerprint.
There were fingerprints on the letters.
On about a dozen of the letters that were mailed while Paul was in prison, investigators found his fingerprints.
Okay, I don't understand. That's just not possible. Was he framed? Did someone lift his prints and plant them?
That's one theory. That the framer was incredibly sophisticated. They got his prints from something he owned and managed to transfer them to letters years later.
Or the lab made a mistake.
Or there was cross-contamination. We don't know.
Right.
But it presents this impossible logical knot, and it all leads back to the most likely person behind the frame-up.
His ex-wife, Karen Sue.
All the investigative journalists who believe Paul was innocent point to her. She had the motive, the bitter divorce. She had the opportunities, access to his home, to his gun. And she was the one who pointed the police in his direction.
And there was other evidence that pointed away from Paul, right? Something about a car near the booby-trap.
Yes, the El Camino. A witness, another bus driver, saw a large man with sandy hair standing next to a yellow El Camino near the trap site right before Mary got there.
Paul had dark hair. He wasn't a large man.
Correct. But Karen Sue's boyfriend or a relative reportedly matched that description and drove a yellow El Camino.
And what happened to that witness report?
Later versions of the police report allegedly changed the car's color to gray. It suggests that evidence that didn't fit their chosen narrative was either ignored or altered.
So the theory is Karen Sue framed him for revenge, and she was the accomplice or the mastermind who kept the letters going to keep him locked up.
That's what Paul believed, and the tragedy of it all just cascaded through their family. It destroyed them.
Their children were caught in the middle of this.
Completely. Their son, Mark Freshour, he sided with his mother. He never visited his father in prison.
That must have been an incredible weight for him to carry.
It seems it was. Paul later told a journalist he actually suspected Mark was the one who stole the gun, perhaps put up to it by his mother, but he refused to ever say it publicly. He wouldn't implicate his own son.
He protected him, even from prison.
He did. And then, years later, in 2002, Mark Freshour died by suicide. His friends said he just couldn't live with the guilt anymore.
Oh, God. So regardless of who the writer was, their campaign led to Ron's suspicious death and Mark's suicide. It just demolished this entire family tree.
It's a level of destruction that is hard to comprehend. And it leaves us right back where we started, with this paradox.
You have forensic science that is absolutely certain Paul is the writer.
And you have the operational reality of a maximum security prison that makes it absolutely impossible. The case was officially closed when Paul was convicted, but that was just, it was a convenience.
It was a way to give the town an answer, even if it was the wrong one. They never charged anyone for the 11 years of letters that came after. They just ignored it.
The whole conspiracy was ignored. So the question that hangs over Circleville to this day is, who was writing those letters for 11 years? Were they the real killer, the real writer who just used Paul as a pawn?
Or were they just an accomplice, a partner in crime who stopped the second their job was done? We'll probably never know.
Don't forget to subscribe to Whispers of Crime on YouTube and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and all major podcast platforms. Like, share, and comment. Give us your positive review and rating.
And if you're listening and you have any information, any at all, about the identity of the Circleville letter writer, please contact the Pickaway County Sheriff's Office or the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation.
Ron Gillispie died because he believed he knew who his tormentor was. If he was murdered, then the writer got away with it. They framed an innocent man and used the justice system to silence him. Is that person or their partner still living in Ohio today, holding the secret to one of America's most perfect and disturbing unsolved crimes?